Ready to go? That would be wonderful. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ruth Kraft. I'm one of the Uber judges of the competition. I've been at this for 18 years. And in real life, I was a New York State judge for 14 years, and I'm now a senior partner in a law firm. My specialty is employment and labor law. And so I want to give you the instructions for this morning. We're thrilled to have all of you. This is a very challenging part of the presentation, how to do it in 10 minutes. It's even more challenging later on to do it in 2. And so you've all competed yesterday. You've made your presentations using a fictional business identity to a fictional group of people. And now that that's all done and you've had almost a half hour to present the details of your proposals in terms of the legal, financial, and ethical dynamics of the problem, this morning, you've been called back for round 2. And in round 2, you are going to give a presentation that has been requested by the entity, the board, whatever, only to shore up the ethical dynamics of the question. You are going to have 10 minutes to do that. You're going to need to explain why your solution successfully addresses any of the ethical issues that are involved. There will not be Q&A this time. There will not be slides, nor will there be video. Do you understand that?
Yes, thank you.
Are you ready to proceed?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to identify yourselves on the record, since I was a judge. State the name of your university. State your 2 names, tell me what role you are playing, and then tell me what role I am playing.
Sure, I can start. My
Go
name
ahead.
is Nurperi Demirova. I'm an international student studying business administration at Middle East Technical University. And I'm here today with my amazing colleague, if she would like to introduce herself as well.
My name is Rabia, and I'm also from Middle East Technical University, a senior student at Business Administration Department. Good luck, everyone. We are here to represent Waymo's ethics committee here.
And today you will take the role of our board of directors at Waymo.
Great, thank you.
Thank you too.
Okay, and it is now 9:18 a.m. and you have 10 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you. First, I would like to say thank you to our board of directors for calling us back and showing interest in our ethics topic. As Bob mentioned yesterday, Waymo, our company, is currently facing some legal, financial, and ethical challenges as it focuses on developing a completely autonomous car. From a legal standpoint, we can say that law has yet to catch up with the latest technological innovation, as there are some missing gaps and holes within the legislative system that's been caused by the inconsistencies in law between the states and vague court decisions. From a financial standpoint, we can say that our company, unfortunately, is highly dependent on external funding sources, living on that stretched timeline for self-driving technology, which kind of makes the long-term fundraising an area of concern. However, here we're offering our board of directors at Waymo another part of a solution, which is basically focusing on ethics by design. Here, what we mean by ethics by design is basically incorporating ethics throughout all stages of developing and implementing the AI systems. That way, our company will be able to attract additional investment funds that will act as an ethical external control in our company, guiding us through the ethical dilemmas and help us manage the ethical issues. But before we actually go to our solution, let's talk about the challenges that we're facing as a company. One of the biggest ethical challenges is this problem of moral uncertainty. Let's bring back the example we had yesterday, hypothetical example. Let's imagine we're inside an autonomous car driving on a highway. Behind a large truck that carries heavy objects. On the right-hand side, we have a motorcycle. On the left-hand side, we have a conventional SUV car with 5 passengers inside. Let's assume that a heavy object is falling off that truck and is about to crash into our car. What are the options we have on hand? Well, one of the options is swerve to the right and crash into the motorcycle. Second option is crash into the object, sacrificing our own life. Third option is swerve to the left and crash into the SUV car with 5 passengers inside. Unfortunately, regardless of the decision that autonomous car actually makes in this case, it interferes directly with one of the most fundamental human rights, which is a right to life. So how should the AI be programmed to make a decision in cases like this? Well, the consequentialist rationale argues that we should program the AI in a way that where the most lives gets to be saved. So in this case, they might argue that it can be ethically justified to swerve to the right and hit the motorcycle, but in saving those 5 lives. However, this interferes with another fundamental principle, which is using people as mere means. If we do actually choose to crash into the motorcycle, we're using that one person as mere means to actually avoiding the detrimental impact happening to ourselves. In this case, we should really be asking who gets the chance to actually program the car and decide whom to save and whom to kill, and how is this decision-making process going to be evaluated. Another important ethical issue is the conflict of interest that we're facing here. The autonomous cars are created with an idea of guaranteeing safety to the passengers, pedestrians, and the cars around us. So let's just imagine if an autonomous car actually goes beyond the walking pace. That way, it might be unable of preventing itself and crashing into a child that ran around the corner, or a person that started jaywalking. But the walking pace is too slow for the car's passengers. They need to get to different places, right? So how should our engineers strike for this balance between safety and mobility? What speed is going to be considered safe enough? Another important ethical dimension, ethical challenge that I would like to highlight here today is this notion of reaction versus decision. Let's go back to a hypothetical example. Let's imagine instead of an autonomous car, there's just a normal conventional SUV car and a driver is driving at the driver's seat, right? Now, regardless of the decision that driver makes, that decision will be viewed as reaction, an instinctual panic move with no forethought or malice. However, if we put our autonomous car in that place, whatever option that car chooses, it makes a decision that was predetermined way in advance the accident took place. So we may argue that there can be a chance for premeditated murder. The AI algorithm itself has a tendency to favor or systematically discriminate against a particular object to crash into. The AI algorithm is like a black box, and it is our responsibility to know how to deal with things that get out of that box. Another important issue that we're going to face is the hacking issue.
So as my colleague said, AI is a black box and we're not sure, and all the other stakeholders don't know about how artificial intelligence makes its decisions. And in this standpoint, we're also concerned because it's a machine, because it's an artificial intelligence, it can be hacked as well. And that will be a threat for privacy, for the confidential information of our stakeholders, our customers. And we are liable to protect those informations, keep it as a confidential and private information. It's our liability. So under all of these concerns and problems, we came up with a 6-stage solution, comprehensive and constructive solution to deal with all of these issues. In the first stage, we are planning to have providing a shuttle service to local municipalities that has 25 miles per hour maximum speed limit. And we will first launch this shuttle services in small and more stable traffic, safe areas, to be sure that we're providing a safe service in this sense. And after we are getting experience and we see that we're successful in that business, we can move to crowded cities. We can sell this shuttle services to crowded cities. And again, if we succeed in this, if we achieve this, and in the second stage of our plan, we can move to produce level 4, level 3 autonomy level cars, because our infrastructure of road infrastructures, especially the traffic infrastructure or the technological infrastructure, is not enough to produce the 5th level, the highest autonomy level of cars. So we can try to pass to level 3, level 4 autonomies, and until the infrastructure is ready. And then the third level, which is quite important for us, is training our employees, especially engineers, from the design. We call it ethics by design, because we need them to internalize all of these ethics codes, because unfortunately, engineers' first priority is generally being efficient while producing the technology or getting the highest level of technology. But we need to make them internalize all of these ethics codes that we will provide. So we need ethicists, philosophers, to train those people from the very beginning to after the life cycle of the product is over. And in the 4th stage, we as you remember, we raised our concerns about privacy issues. So with the training plan of ours, as we said, we will make our colleagues, our employees to internalize those ethical codes. So that will make them protect the data, protect the confidential data in a better way, because we are planning to identify, we're planning to authorize a couple of people, not all the employees have the access to confidential information. So the limited number of employees will have the access to confidential information of customers. That will makes us protect the data better, and we will audit those people who have the access to data as well. We will have internal and external audit to control the situation. And in the fifth level, we are aiming to create an awareness to all the stakeholders, the drivers, the society, the lawmakers, because we need to be transparent. As we said, it's a black box, and we need to explain how artificial intelligence makes its decisions, because sometimes it sometimes needs to sacrifice people's lives, and it's a matter of life, and we need to be transparent to public about that. And in the last and one of the most important stages, we are planning to include wide range of stakeholders in our making of our ethical codes. What do we mean by that is there are cultural differences that we need to regard. There are different perspectives from different stakeholder groups. For instance, lawmakers might be included, or passengers, vulnerable road users, bike riders, drivers from different cultures, for instance, from Asia to Russia. We need to include all type of people to create a heterogeneous and a comprehensive ethical code here. So today we try to enlighten, we try to raise our concerns regarding the problem of moral uncertainty, conflict of interest, and privacy and transparency. And we bring up a constructive 6-stage solution to solve all of those problems. So thank you for giving this chance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll just wait for our technology, which is not artificial intelligence, but live intelligence, to switch us over to the College of the Holy Cross.
Can the next...
I don't know about that. Okay, go ahead, ladies.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Cody, and I am the psychologist representative on the Facebook Ethics Committee.
And my name is Lindsay Vaca, and I will be the Finance and Accounting Officer on the committee today. Thank you for having us.
In order to get started, I'd like to bring us back to what our core values as a company are. Our 5 values are to focus on impact, to move fast, to be bold, be open, and to build social value. Our goal today is to restore the Facebook brand to our core values and return us back to our mission, which is to better connect family and friends around the world and to capture and share the world's moments. So what is our problem here today? Our problem is that adolescent individuals, we're defining them as ages 13 to 18 years old, are addicted to our platform. They are addicted to Instagram, and they are addicted to Facebook. They are at a very vulnerable age, and we as a company have an obligation to our youth to protect them. Based on what our core values state, we have an obligation to these young users to make sure that they are safe when they are interacting with our platform. What are some companies that we as a company should think about? Is it ethical to exploit adolescents knowing that our platform has addictive tendencies? Do we have an obligation to our vulnerable users? Our opinion is yes, we do have an obligation to these vulnerable users, and no, it is not ethical to exploit adolescents knowing that our platform is addictive. So what are we proposing to do? How can we tackle this addictive problem? We are proposing the introduction of Facebook and Instagram Lite. Essentially, this would be a modification of our current program that would target users 13 to 18. What it would do is it would remove the like button, it would remove reels, it would remove hashtags, and it would remove places. What this does is it creates a safer environment for 13 to 18-year-olds to interact on our social media platforms while upholding our original mission, which is to share photos and moments with each other. Once you are 18, however, there is an option to opt back into the full program. However, for the 13 to 18-year-old age group, their brains aren't mature enough to understand the full platform. And so we are creating a limited platform for them in order to take care of them as our young users. It's a vulnerable age group, so we as a company are obligated to protect them. So you might be wondering, why are adolescents so vulnerable and why do we need to do something about this? Well, during the adolescent development stage, the brain is developing in two parts. The limbic system, which regulates emotions, is developing prior to the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of logic and reason. Because of this developmental mismatch, adolescents are processing events in an extremely emotional manner. What this means is that when one of their peers does something extremely positive, like their photo on Instagram, comment on a common video, then there's a dopamine squirt in their brain. That's a positive peer response. And this dopamine squirt is extremely addictive, just like a drug would be. On the other hand, when something negative happens, an adolescent puts themselves out there and they post a photo on Instagram and they receive no likes from the people that they think are their friends. That peer rejection hurts, and it affects an adolescent so severely that it can actually be treated by pain medicine like Tylenol. So we find ourselves in a problem. Our adolescents are not being predicted from the new drug of their age, Facebook. Our program is putting them at risk for mental health issues and is putting them at risk of depressive symptoms. I'm going to pass it off to Lindsay to talk about some other ethical dimensions.
Thank you, Caitlin, for that wonderful introduction to our ethical issue at hand. Another side to what you said that's important to point out is, at the same time, is it ethical for us to make this modification that we're suggesting to our platform, knowing that it will have an immediate effect on our shareholders and our employees? Don't we have an obligation to maximize our revenues and our share prices for our shareholders? One thing to consider when we're thinking about this is that if we do not make these modifications, we're going to anticipate a lot more lawsuits. We're already facing numerous amounts of lawsuits related to non-consensual tracking of activity, especially of adolescents, and the like button. And so we can anticipate that this is going to go up and we're going to have to pay more money in damages, more money in legal fees. And we're already facing a huge lawsuit anyways related to antitrust laws. So it's not something else that we need on our plate. And so we need to figure out what's a better way to use our shareholders' money. Is it ethical for us to keep using our shareholder money to do things like lawsuits when we can put it to better use? By doing lawsuits, it's no way to spend our money. It doesn't increase any share value or anything like that. So with our solution, we could put this money to better use. We can make more of our shareholders' money, which they will appreciate as well. We could put it into research and development, which could potentially lead to more mental health awareness on the issues. And that would contribute to our core value of adding social value and being a better company to ensure that our platforms do not harm people. Another important connection that I want to make is between our platform, Facebook, with the cigarette industry, because Facebook, like Caitlin said, is a drug, just like cigarettes are. It's addicting. 50 years ago, we were at the tip of an iceberg with the cigarette industry. People were just starting to figure out how bad it was for your physical health and your lungs. However, that was the norm. That's what people did. You got smoke breaks during work and you saw people doing it in movies. All the cool people did it. It was a common activity to partake in, and the industry took advantage of that. They knowingly put more addictive chemicals in the substance in cigarettes in order to keep users and customers buying it. Over the years, we saw how that happened. The industry took a nosedive and cigarette companies began to go out of business. The public perception sharply declined to the point where there was little to no support of smoking, and there were programs and ads against it. And essentially, the industry got blacklisted because of the clear medical problems with smoking. And we find ourselves in a very similar situation today with our platform. We are at that tip of an iceberg where we're just starting to figure out that our platform has negative health effects, just like the cigarettes, especially on adolescent brains. Do we have an obligation to fix it, especially after seeing what happened to the cigarette industry? And I would definitely heed it as a warning. We don't want to see what would happen if we don't fix what we're doing, if we continue to put addictive things like reels into our platform. We don't want what happened to the cigarette industry to happen to us, because we don't want to knowingly add things and make this group more vulnerable than they already are. As a final point, I'd like to point out that it does make financial sense to continue to exploit our users for revenue sake right now in the immediate time. But knowingly putting our users in this age group in a harmful position goes against our core values, and that is, of course, unethical.
In order to conclude, I'd like to just make a statement. You, members of the executive board, you have a loyalty to our company, Facebook, yes, but you're also a parent. You're also a grandparent. You're an aunt. You're an uncle. You have adolescents that depend on you and love you. Do you want a product that you are marketing, your company, to be targeting them and putting them in an at-risk situation? Would you want that for your children? We as a company have an obligation to work with parents in order to take care of the youth that is interacting with our interface. In order to conclude, I'd like to remind you that Facebook is a leader in our industry. We as a social media industry have taken the lead, and other companies are following what we are doing. With this comes a great opportunity. We can be a leader to the other social media brands like TikTok, like Twitter. We hope that they will then follow in our footsteps in prioritizing the health and well-being of the adolescent age group. This is a bold strategy, and it would require us to move quickly. However, that's exactly what our core values state. We want to be bold. We want to be innovative. We want to move quickly. Most of all, we need to focus on building social value. Right now, the way our platform is moving, we don't have social value because we are putting the vulnerable members of our population at risk. In order to build our social value, we need to solve this problem, get ahead of it, be proactive, and address it head on. Thank you very much. Let's keep it real online, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. So next up will be the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Please tell me your roles and mine.
Sure, yeah. So we are the Eisenberg Innovation Consultants. So my name is Tommy Colucci. I'll let Fiona.
Okay, and what is my role, please?
And you'll be taking the role of Spac sponsorship team, Queen's Gambit Growth Capital.
Okay, so could you just say the name of the first part of that?
Yep, so it's a Spac sponsorship, a special purpose acquisition company sponsorship team.
It's a mouthful. Okay, let me just tell you that it is 9:39. Okay, you can begin, please.
Awesome. So again, my name is Tommy Colucci.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fiona Herskovich.
And today we're happy to join up again to talk to you a little bit more about the ethics behind special purpose acquisition companies, what they're all about, and what opportunities they bring in the investment space. So we really come at it from this perspective of today's ethics are tomorrow's laws, right? And then, as a matter of fact, with the recent confirmation of Gary Gensler as the new SEC chairman, there have already been signals for tighter and stricter regulations surrounding special purpose acquisition companies in the Spac realm. So from a disclosure perspective, we already see that there are regulations being put into place on a daily basis, just as of a couple of days ago. And some companies that we might be familiar with, as a matter of fact, like TGI Fridays and CEC Entertainment, so Chuck E. Cheese's, that have attempted to go public via Spac and did not have the proper disclosure regimes in place, have already failed because of this. So our recommendations related to baking in ethics and really staying ahead of this regulatory curve as you move forward in the Spac sponsorship process have become really more salient given the regulatory shifts that we've seen again on a daily basis. So I'm going to shift it over to Fiona here to talk a little bit more about our preliminary recommendation for you.
Yeah, so our recommendation comes in a four-pronged approach. And that first prong is creating a team of experienced professionals to manage legal and accounting obstacles. And that second prong is establishing a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI guidelines. And it's important to note here that these DEI guidelines are as fluid and as dynamic as the society that is creating them. And specifically here, diversity is defined as diversity in gender, age, nation of origin, but also diversity in professional experience. And you, Queen's Gambit, you've already established diversity in gender. You are a Spac that is run entirely by an all-female management team. And you are also a Spac that has both lawyers and accountants and investment professionals that are all working together to help to bring target companies into the public market. And you're at a unique placement where you can utilize your own inclusive makeup to help diversify places where women are underrepresented, especially in tech startups. And the third prong here is to properly disclose to the SEC and statement users in advance of the directive to do so. So again, like Tommy said, staying ahead of that regulatory curve. And the fourth, being a leader in this space by taking an active role in regulatory regimes within the SPAC industry. I'm going to pass it back over to my colleague, Tommy, to discuss the stakeholders in SPACs.
Right. So thanks, Fiona. Again, we recognize that SPACs really pose this great opportunity to a number of stakeholders, right? And we're going to talk about the opportunities that arise, and with respect to each stakeholder, as well as the duties that you have as a SPAC sponsorship team to each one of the stakeholders. So first up on the list, we have the retail investor, the average everyday investor, non-professional investor in the stock market. We believe that SPACs allow retail investors this opportunity that has traditionally been reserved to a professional or experienced investor. So currently we see about the top 1% of wealth holding more than half of the public stock that's out there. And that's contributing to this idea of the wealth gap. And that's one of the things that we're trying to solve here. We want to be able to democratize wealth through the perspective of special purpose acquisition companies. We think that this is possible. We want to make sure that we're preserving this possibility, we're preserving these opportunities for the years to come. So in your obligations to the retail investor, of course, we have this idea of preserving this financial instrument in years to come, as well as appropriately disclosing important financial information to the SEC and appropriately communicating with your investors and making sure that you're not misrepresenting them so that they can build trust in your system. I'm going to pass it right back to Fiona to talk a little bit about our second stakeholder, the target company.
Yeah, so the SPAC have an ethical obligation to the target company in that it's important to scale up good corporate culture. And that means acquiring a target company that includes financial and accounting controls, as well as ethical and legal compliance. And that really includes scaling a corporate culture that values profit, yes, but also DEI guidelines. Think about it. If target companies don't pay attention to DEI guidelines now, that company could run into HR issues, leadership issues, which could stop that company's progress in its tracks. So instead of growing with the diversity, the company now has to step back to include it. Thus, you as a SPAC want to encourage target acquisition companies to really incorporate these DEI guidelines within their company DNA from the very start. You want to stay ahead of the regulatory curve. I'm going to pass it back over to Tommy to talk about our SPAC sponsors.
Right. So the third stakeholder that we have in this case is, of course, the SPAC sponsors, right? So people like yourselves that are looking to bring private companies into the public space, right? And of course, this can provide great financial benefit for people like yourselves. And we want to make sure, again, that we're preserving this instrument for SPAC sponsorships in years to come. So what does that include? I mean, again, we've seen a recent uptick in trends in this trend of forming special purpose acquisition companies, specifically with celebrities and other companies like DraftKings and Virgin Galactic and WeWork. So we see a lot of people actually getting involved in this space already, but we want to make sure that this sense of hype doesn't pop. This bubble is not popping. We want to put the right precautions into place now so that in the future, we're avoiding the creation of this SPAC bubble. So our proposals here really put you at a fork in the road, right? The way that we see it is that there's 3 directions that you can take from here on out with respect to SPAC sponsorship. So the first direction, the first route per se, would be to not use special purpose acquisition companies at all, which would mean that the retail investor misses out on this unique opportunity, this similar access to wealth that an experienced or professional investor has had in the past. We also see that target companies, private companies that maybe are worthy of public funding, may be missing out on the flexibility of SPACs should you not use them, right? And then again, this overall idea of the democratization of the market being decreased. We also see another route being using SPACs, but not respecting any of the ethical or legal disclosure requirements that we are recommending for you. Again, Through our recommendation, you might see from a financial perspective that it might not make sense, right? You might be thinking, well, if SPACs are operating in kind of this super flexible, unfiltered environment today, then why should we put the proper precautions into place now? Well, this would eventually lead to SPACs being regulated out of space. So the whole framework stands to fall apart if we're not respecting the ethical guidelines today. I'm going to pass it right back over to Fiona to talk a little bit about our recommendation for you, the third route, and this idea of profit versus diversity.
Yeah, so like Tommy said, there are two directions that we can take this in, but we want to use SPACs, but we need to do so in an ethical way. There has to be a nuanced approach to this. So it's important to think about that. Companies, they have to abide by legal and ethical disclosure requirements, as well as financial controls and transparent accounting. And this means incorporating integrity into a company's corporate culture and business practices so that when a SPAC scales a target company and that target company goes public, that SPAC is encouraging the target acquisition company to have a transparent culture of ethical and legal compliance with them. As we all know, businesses have an imperative to be profitable. And yes, profit helps to fuel innovation, but in order for a business to move forward ethically, they need to pursue profits in a just manner. And not is it only important to think about ethics and compliance generally, but more specifically, especially in today's society, DEI is of a particular ethical concern. And you, Queen's Gambit, are at the forefront of all of this. You're run by an all-female management team. You're harnessing inclusivity by running a SPAC, running a company that embraces the need in the business field to incorporate women roles where they normally wouldn't be found. And after all, in this past year alone, society has grown louder in their call for justice. And part of that is giving the hammer to women and breaking more glass ceilings and giving women more leadership roles. And Queen's Gambit, you have delivered society's call by leading a successful, profitable company rooted in gender diversity and inclusion. And with this all-female management team, as well as diversity and professional experience, you have the unique position to take a target company under your wing and demonstrate that by embracing DEI guidelines now, especially now, and staying ahead of that regulatory curve, you have the potential to enhance a business's credibility and further increase the profits of potential target acquisition companies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have one more team left. USF.
Go. Oh, okay. So hello, my name is Julie Linkhogel. I am the ethics consultant for One Up Consulting.
And my name is Tijan Jones. I will be the legal consultant for One Up Consulting. And you will be the board of directors for Electronic Arts, which we'll be referring to as EA, just so you know.
Right down the street from our old haunts at Loyola Marymount. Absolutely. Okay. All right. It is now 9:50 a.m. and you may proceed.
Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, hello and good morning, board of directors at Electronic Arts. We are very excited that you called us back to speak here today. We here at One Up Consulting are excited to discuss the ethical issues surrounding the loot box mechanism that's present in a lot of your video games, particularly the positive correlation between engagement with this system and gambling in minors. But first, we must discuss the mechanics of this system and its connections to gambling, and the psychological connections to gambling before we discuss the further details about child gambling in general.
As the second largest gaming company within Europe and the Americas, you set the standard for excellence. However, that doesn't mean that ethical problems are one of the past, and that has become exceedingly clear within the game FIFA, a soccer video game, through this loot box system. Now, FIFA is the largest source of revenue for EA, so any ethical problems that we may have are extremely important. But this loot box mechanism in FIFA acts as basically a player pack, which means that consumers, whenever buying this, can use real-world money in order to purchase virtual randomized players that they can then add to their team in the video game. And if bought, it allows for the possibility of a higher ranked player, which in turn can help win more games.
Now, it's very important to note that a higher player isn't guaranteed with engagement to the system. But just for reference, to obtain these higher tiered players or a team of them through normal gameplay can take up to 22,000 hours. This is why consumers, and especially children who are less prone to patience, as any parent might know, are incentivized to engage with the system and continue to pay for these packs despite there being a randomized outcome. However, in FIFA, it is not just the randomization of the outcome that's the issue. It is the presentation and the direct connection to real world money that makes this issue connected to gambling.
As consumers continue to deposit more and more money into the system, its resemblance to a slot machine becomes all that more apparent. Basically, whenever someone purchases a player pack, the game screen is automatically switched, and it takes you to a tunnel underneath a stadium, and the lights and the audio builds up the suspense until a player's team, flag, and their position is all revealed like tiles sliding into place. Then you're taken out of that tunnel and into a giant stadium in which there is thunderous applause, fireworks, flamethrowers, confetti, and all that you can imagine as the player that you spun for walks out and does a dance on the field. This audio and visual rewards basically act the same as a slot machine, and the same visual and audio rewards that you might get from that. This acts as a positive relation within a ludic loop.
A ludic loop is the gambling psychology term for an addiction feedback loop, which refers to the repetition of an addiction cycle, repeated engagement with a compulsive stimulus that is repeated and stays in the face of adverse consequences. A ludic loop and a slot machine are traditional examples of this actually happening, as the immediate rewards and pleasure stimuli that exist at the end of a slot machine, whether or not you win the monetary prize, are one of the reasons that the addiction is fueled. This system also creates loss aversion. Basically, players continue to engage with the system because they want to win. Now, there is a growing body of research that connects these loot box systems and engagement in children to problem gambling and problem gambling severity. But there is also research showing that children are most susceptible to this addiction.
And this is an extremely troubling narrative for FIFA, as this game is rated E for everyone. Now, this is extremely terrible because this is targeting children who don't actually understand the bad things about FIFA and its connection to gambling. They have no moral agency, basically meaning that they don't understand the consequences of the decisions that they are making. And because of this addiction cycle that we talked about, any future harms or any future moral agency that they might have is stripped away from them. Now, obviously, this is a massive concern because for children, a problem and addiction to gambling could mean a multitude of ethical harms. Not only does it result in poor school performance and leading to other addictions, but it also leads to feelings of self-hatred, depression, and anxiety. Even worse, a leading UK gambling charity in 2020 found out that there was a 15 times more likelihood for gamblers to take their own life. And once again, this game that includes all of those ethical harms, including the risk of suicide, is marketed to children who are far more susceptible to these harms.
EA as a gaming company has a corporate social responsibility to care for its environment and community of players, specifically the human rights of that community. EA says in its impact statements that it aligns with the values in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. But the reality is this loot box mechanism violates Article 36, which discusses the rights of a child to be protected from exploitation. If EA continues to use this loot box mechanism, it will continue to fuel gambling addiction in children, and EA will profit off of this. What this means is that EA is essentially profiting off of children addiction and exploiting that addiction for their own profit. This is a huge problem and brings up to the forefront that maybe EA should reevaluate its company values in the context of the situation.
And the identification of this problem isn't just resulted from our small consulting firm, but is echoed even within EA's own risk statement. And it's been seen through the problems with their past games in Battlefront 2. Now, this game had extreme negative consumer feedback because of the pay-to-play system that is evident within loot boxes. Basically the same thing that's happening within FIFA right now. And in their 2020 risk assessment, they state that within FIFA, this can mean a loss in revenue or even a loss in reputation. And this is already coming about worldwide. In Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany, this game is banned. And 14 other countries, as of right now, are considering legislation to do the same. The United States is one of those. And if the current Senate bill actually passes, then it means that EA, through their game FIFA, would be banned in their own home country. Even worse, the European Union themselves have stated that they want to ban it across their member states, meaning that 7 out of the 8 past actual FIFA World Cup winners wouldn't be able to play the video game. Simply put, this is a 62% loss in player base for FIFA and for EA.
So what can we at OneUp Solutions offer EA as a solution to this issue? What solution can we propose that eradicates this pay-to-play system and this gambling addiction that is fueled through this loot box mechanism? And that is the Battle Pass. A Battle Pass would act as a season's pass or a subscription service to the game and offer a tiered solution to consumers where they can access similar rewards through gameplay. This means that instead of rewards being randomized and you have to purchase them, the rewards that are within the loot box system can be attained and guaranteed through gameplay and skill. So as the players play the game, they will be able to obtain these rewards. This offers a different revenue platform for EA through FIFA and will allow consumers to operate on higher tiered levels while also allowing for there to be free or lower tiered levels that offer similar rewards for consumers who do not wish to buy into this system. There is also an option for more diversity in revenue options, including an in-game store, which could offer items that are not essential to gameplay and more aesthetically, more relating to aesthetic value, but that consumers can also use to customize their own game experience in a more ethical manner. That EA can also get rid of these same issues that were existent with the loot box system, including that pay to play and including that addiction that is fueled by the randomization aspects.
And the best part about this system is that we know it works. Fortnite utilizes the same system and is wildly successful. Call of Duty transitioned from a loot box system into a battle pass, just like we are recommending, and doubled their revenue. Obviously, this is legally and financially sound, and the best part is that ethically, all of the harms that come along with loot boxes aren't present within the system. Children don't even have the possibility of gambling anything or spending as much money as they could in the other system because there's only a certain amount of items within the in-game store. What this means is that EA can finally start listening to their consumers and giving them the consistency, transparency, and accessibility that their consumers have been begging for. Finally, EA can move to be a country that protects minors and create a game that is truly rated E for everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask Megan to bring us back to the full screen, if we can.